The Florida housing market and Florida real estate is ice cold. The buyer's market is here and it is in full force. And I want to send a special shout out to my good friend Jarrett Jones. I've been texting with him recently and I'm hoping that we can collaborate here and discuss what's going on in the market, because I watched his latest video and he's got a lot of views, but the market is dynamic, and the markets that exist within Florida are enormous. There's massive variability that goes on in each and every market throughout Florida and throughout the nation. So to paint a picture of the market being ice cold without knowing exactly what market we're talking about is frankly irresponsible. Almost as irresponsible as me standing this close to the street because I'm about to get hit by a car. And I've got a confession to make. I've been wanting to shoot a video down by the beach, which is where I'm at now, for the last few weeks. And truthfully, the weather's been so bad, I haven't been able to make that video. But I finally got fed up and decided I'm gonna come out here irrespective of what the weather conditions are. But it's rainy, it's overcast, it's gray. It feels like I'm in New Jersey. And while I happen to be wearing a long sleeve shirt, which is more about me protecting myself from the sun than it is the weather, it's something like 75 degrees out. It's a little bit breezy, but I'm also wearing swim trunks. I can jump in the ocean and go swimming if I want to. But each one of these buildings, every single one of these homes that is next to the beach, they're all gonna get destroyed and devastated when we get hit with a Category 5 hurricane. And I talk to people from around the country and around the world all the time who are thinking about buying or selling right here in Florida. And the Florida market is like a jungle. Sometimes I gotta wonder how I keep from going under. And truthfully, at this point, the only thing I've got to wonder about is how long I can keep my arm like this without rocking the camera, because my gimbal isn't charged. It failed. It failed me. But I will not fail you. The truth is, right now, the market is being challenged. And when people talk in broad strokes about what the Florida market is, I think it's really irresponsible to talk in broad strokes, because what's happening in Boca Raton or Delray Beach or Boynton Beach or Fort Lauderdale or Miami is very different than what's going on in Ocala or Sanford or Kissimmee or the Villages or Gainesville or Tampa or Destin or Fort Walton Beach or Kissimmee or Tallahassee or Jacksonville, or insert any city you want in the state of Florida, or insert any city that you want throughout the country, because every market is going to trade extremely differently. But chances are you're not going to find this type of view, and swim at your own risk, no lifeguard on duty. Well, I'm a risk taker, and we're going to walk over here to the beach. But I know we're susceptible to being eaten by a shark, or perhaps a killer whale, or perhaps a manatee, which I don't think anybody's ever been killed by a manatee, but why not? It's possible. Maybe there are killer manatees. And truthfully, the wind is too bad, but check out those surfers out there. They're hanging 10 or catching 8 or whatever they're doing, but they're having fun. They're maxing out South Florida living to the fullest. And it's about to rain, so I am going to head back to the vehicle. But it should be noted, while this area is pristine and it is well preserved and it is protected, there are single family homes and neighborhoods around here that are exceptionally nice and extremely affluent. But then also there are neighborhoods that are far less than. And there's a massive disparity in lifestyle and incomes just a few blocks from each other. And no, that's not fair. But the market's not fair, and the economy's not fair, and life's not fair. But I am on top of the data. I am tracking each and every market within Florida and throughout the country. But the data that I saw that scared me the most recently was terrifying. And frankly, it was so bad, I thought I might be having a heart attack or a stroke. And most of the time when I say that type of stuff, I'm saying it to create a sense of fear or urgency. But the reality of this is the data that I saw was my blood pressure. And the doctor had asked me to track my data, my blood pressure, when I went for my annual physical last month. And unlike the housing market, which I track every day, I did not track my blood pressure. But I got a reminder from the doctor because their follow-up is almost as good as mine. And I got an automated reminder that my appointment was coming up about a week in advance. So I did what I said I was going to do. I ordered a blood pressure monitor from Amazon. And when I received it, I started tracking my blood pressure. And the results that I got were astoundingly high. They were scary. They were really bad, really high. And of course, I ignored them at first. But when I continued the process and I continued to track my blood pressure, I continued to get compounding bad results, worse and worse scores. They were skyrocketing, and they weren't going lower. They weren't staying the same. They were in the red zone, and the data told me, go to the hospital immediately because you're likely having a heart attack or stroke. And thankfully, I got into the vehicle before the rain really started, but the data that I saw was terrifying. But I had a suspicion that the data that I was looking at was not accurate. And truthfully, had my children come to me with any of these types of blood pressure readings, I would have immediately taken them to the hospital or to the doctor. I would have gotten them the attention that I think they might need because I don't want to play games with their health. But with my health, I'm willing to be a little bit more liberal, a little bit more open-minded. And truthfully, I don't have the same concerns about myself that I do for them, which is probably stupid. But nonetheless, I knew I had a follow-up appointment, which happened this week. And when I went into the doctor this week and they took my blood pressure, what they found is that my blood pressure is fine. But the data that I was getting from the machine that I purchased was completely wrong. And it seems obvious now, but in the moment, it was terrifying because I had uncertainty about my health. And the readings were something like 200 over 140, which meant I was likely about to die. But what the doctor quickly pointed out was that the cuff, which was measuring my blood pressure on my arm, did not fit. There was 0% chance that the data that I was going to receive would be accurate because my arm doesn't fit into the cuff. And yes, I'm sure there's a younger version of me that would have gladly pointed out, isn't that great because I'm so jacked? That's not how I feel as a 48-year-old. I was scared. And I know how much uncertainty can make people afraid. And I know how uncertainty drives fear. And I know how fear can paralyze people. And I'm going to take a quick detour into Oceanfront Park and hopefully not get into an accident on my way in, because I think this is a really cool place to talk about what's going on in the Florida market. But Oceanfront Park is very different than downtown Delray Beach. It's very different than Delray Beach. It's very different than Fort Lauderdale Beach. It's very different than any beach in Clearwater. It's a completely different set and setting. And today, because it's windy and rainy and overcast, there's plenty of space to park, but that's not usually the case. Usually it's completely packed and it's impossible to park. And I suspect many of you know, prior to being in the real estate industry, I was a stockbroker. I did that for 20 years. And when I was a stockbroker, I faced each and every economic cycle, each and every global pandemic or crisis or war or destabilizing event or market meltdown or recession or depression or default or liquidity crisis or market crash that could possibly be experienced. And when the great financial crisis happened, many people asked me, what should we do? What should we invest in? What is our financial plan to get out of this crisis? And I don't intend to turn this into a financial advice channel. But when I see some of the other content creators that are in the space talking about things that could happen in the future based on what they see in their analysis, I see content creators like Jared Jones, like myself, like Michael Bordenero, like Real Estate Mindset, like Economic Ninja or Real Estate Ninja or whatever ninja he happens to be this week, like Clear Value Tax, like Patrick Bet David's podcast, like Saks Realty, like all of these content creators that are in the space. And while I do suspect that they are telling the truth in whatever their latest video is, I also suspect that truth is distilled down to a very small sample size that fits whatever narrative they're trying to tell in that title. And while Jared Jones is 100% right that Florida housing or Florida real estate is ice cold and the buyer's market is here, if we apply that logic to my market, that would really depend on what neighborhood and street you're talking about. Because the housing market can be distilled into a very small sample size of whatever it is that you're looking for, depending on whether you're planning on selling or buying. And I did a video yesterday talking about it only gets worse from here, and the thumbnail had 50% off in big letters on the thumbnail. And I saw some of the comments that said it's going to be more than 50% off. And they're probably right, because at some point that will be true. But it brings me back to my stockbroker days when people would ask me, what's the most that I could lose on this particular investment? And to be clear, a house that you intend to live in is not looked at the same way as an investment, at least in my opinion. But I always answered by telling them the truth. You can lose 100% of whatever you've invested. And whatever investment you made, whatever the stock price is, and for this example, I'm making one up, the stock that you bought at 100 that you think is going to 200, just know that it can go to 0. And although that's typically unlikely to happen, it's happened before. The banking sector got decimated during the great financial crisis. And I don't believe it was on purpose. I think that many of these banks and institutions did not know what they did not know. They had no idea how exposed their balance sheets were to toxic, devastating, hard to quantify risks on their balance sheet. And each and every one of those bad debts that they incurred, that they accrued, that they took on, blew up. And those big banks like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, they went out of business. They defaulted. The banking system was about to go bust. And in 2023, the banking system went bust, but it got bailed out numerous times, and the Fed saved the day. The Treasury saved the day. And yes, there is an affordability crisis. And yes, inflation is through the roof. And yes, there are all types of systemic risks inherent in the system that I've been talking about for years. But obla-di, obla-da, life goes on, right? No, it doesn't. Not if you don't have any money, not if you don't have any income, not if you lose your job. And right now, 20% of Southern California offices are empty. And right now, customers of Loan Depot who have money and want to make their mortgage payments can't, because Loan Depot's system was hacked. And foreclosures are on the uptick. California foreclosures filings climbed 41% off pandemic era lows. And while right now in Florida, there does not appear to be a real uptick in foreclosures, I'm here to tell you that's horseshit. Check into your local county court auction site, which is online somewhere, Google it, and you'll be astounded by how many auctions are taking place right now. You'll also be astounded by the buyers of those auctions, which never see the light of day. They happen to be mostly institutional buyers. And no, I am not a conspiracy theorist, although I did just see a video, and I think it was Joe Rogan, who talked about it. But in New York, there were people who built a tunnel underneath the building, which might be the dumbest thing on the planet, but they basically built in a gigantic sinkhole underneath the building, But for whatever reason, these folks decided they wanted to build a tunnel underneath New York City, underneath this particular building, and it only came to light in a viral video when a Jewish guy popped out of a manhole cover. And to be clear, I love Jewish people. I love you. There is no harm or foul intended by the identity of whoever it was that was building the tunnel, other than that's the title of the viral clip. But I get phone calls from people in my market who are affluent, who are trying to sell me their Rolex. They're trying to sell me their boat. They're trying to sell me their membership to a boat club. And one of the things that many people ask about when they're not really familiar with Florida, but they have the dream of living on the waterfront or living on the intercoastal so they can live that waterfront lifestyle and have a boat in the backyard. Many of them can't afford to live that lifestyle, but they can afford to live a little bit off the coast, and they can afford to be a member of a boat club. So, problem solved. You don't have to pay for all the upkeep of a boat. You simply have to let the boat club know when you're coming, and they will gas up and set you up on whatever boat you want, as defined by their membership. And if you're looking for a good one, check out Freedom Boat Club. But I got to get back to topic here. Florida housing is ice cold and the buyer's market is here. And almost every one of the content creators that I talked about earlier is talking about the massive crash that has to happen soon. Well, I got a little secret for you about all of these content creators and the accuracy of their predictions, because I suspect you want to know when the housing market will crash. And I'm going to tell you. Nobody knows. 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 Except my nose. Except my nose. My nose knows. And shout out to all the people who like to point out that I have a big nose. I have a Roman nose. It's roaming all over my face. Well, the truth is, there are lots of things that are happening on a macro level that point to there must be a massive correction systemically. And I agree, when the system breaks, there is going to be economic hell to pay and real estate values will get devastated. But I suspect the government is going to do whatever they must do to ensure that doesn't happen anytime soon. And it's irrelevant that I think it should have happened 20 years ago or 15 years ago when they started to bail out the system. In real time, I said, let the system fail because it will be painful, but it will also be behind us. And here we are 20 years later with trillions of dollars of debt that cannot ever be repaid. And worse, the system has so much toxic risk built into it that there is no cure. There's only default. And default is not your fault. And denial's not a river in Egypt, but denial is not something that we should be doing right now. We need to know exactly what's happening in order to govern ourselves the right way. But if you're waiting for a 50% crash in my housing market, well, I got bad news for you. It's not happening anytime soon, period. But that does not mean that the buyer's market isn't here, because in Cape Coral, the month supply of inventory is up 96.4%. And foreclosures in Cape Coral, Fort Myers Metro are up 100% at a whopping 4. And shout out to Kevin and Michelle, Kevin 24/7 and Squirrel Tribe 2.0. But Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, and Destin, the month's supply of inventory, meaning the supply of homes sitting on the market unsold, is up damn near 68%, which indicates it's a buyer's market. Buyers have more choices. But those choices don't really include distressed sales, because although foreclosures were up 100%, there were only 2 in that metro. But Jacksonville, Florida, month supply of inventory is skyrocketing up 21.4%. Buyer's market. And Naples, Immokalee, and Marco Island Metro, month supply of inventory is up damn near 49%, 6.1 months supply of inventory. Buyer's market. But the distressed market's non-existent. It's actually down 100% year over year, with a whopping 0 foreclosures in Naples, Immokalee, Marco Island Metro. And again, that's not the same as the off-market auctions that are happening. That's what's recorded in the MLS, which is a goose egg. But Northport, Sarasota, and Bradenton, month supply of inventory is in buyers' favor, skyrocketing up 44.4% at a whopping 4 months. And according to the powers that be, there are no distressed sales. Which brings me to Orlando, Kissimmee, and Sanford Metro. And the month supply of inventory in that metro is up a whopping 22%. But distressed inventory, short sales are down 25%, and foreclosures are skyrocketing, up 300%. There were a whopping 16 foreclosures in this metro. Port St. Lucie, no bueno. It's a buyer's market. Month supply of inventory skyrocketed 9.4%. And no distressed sales, which is not the case in Tampa, St. Petersburg, and the Clearwater Metro in Florida, where the month supply of inventory upticked 12.5%, but the distressed market skyrocketed, with foreclosures up 100% and short sales up 100%, coming in at 14 foreclosures and 2 short sales, which is a massive uptick on a percentage gain basis, but not really a whole lot of distressed sales. Which takes me to the Villages Metro, which we have to talk about because this is where the active adults like to get their freak on, or at least so I've heard. But the month supply of inventory is unchanged. It's trading flat. So I wouldn't describe it as a buyer's market there, but perhaps the distressed inventory will tell us a different story. And what I see is that foreclosures and short sales don't exist in this market as of the last published statement by the Florida Realtors Association. There were 0 foreclosures and 0 short sales. But I don't suspect that the lack of short sales or foreclosures really means much when we know that people are feeling financial distress. We know that credit card debt is at an all-time high. We know that I'm stuck behind the Sonata, who is either unloading or loading. Yep, somebody is coming in from the beach and they're loading their trunk, and he's got a tie-dye shirt wrapped around his waist. So I'm going to go ahead and say he is a deadhead, and Jerry Garcia rules. And I really meant to say the dead, but Cherry Garcia sounds delicious, and I'm hot and could definitely use some ice cream. But look at the variability of weather, because it was raining 2 seconds ago and now the sun is out. And while the sun may be shining bright in your market, and I hope it is, and the sun may be shining bright on your personal financial circumstance, which I hope it is, I also know the trend is not our friend. And although I don't think the Florida market is ice cold by any stretch of the imagination, unless you're priced out of the market and you can't afford a mortgage and you don't have the cash to buy a home, well then I'm sure it's ice cold. And despite the fact I just shared about how the supply side has changed tremendously in each one of those metros, I also know, based on my own experience as a boots on the ground operator of a high performance real estate team, homes that are priced the right way sell fast with multiple offers, which bid the price higher. It happens every day. It's happening right now. But as of yet, the mansion right here at 6301, those sellers have not talked to me about potentially selling, but they're never going to sell because I suspect it is family estate money, which is going to be parked there forever. And there was some talk or rumor and speculation that that was Oprah's house, but that's not true. But I don't suspect the folks that live there are concerned about what's going on in the economy or the financial markets or the housing market locally. But I could be wrong, because when the system breaks, there's no way of knowing how bad the pain will be, but everybody will be affected and many will be destroyed. Which brings me back to a stockbroker story. And this really happened, but I had built a position in a biotech company and I owned hundreds of thousands of shares for myself and clients. I was 1000% convinced, based on my research, that this particular biotech company was going to be a massive home run when they finally got their drug approved. But that would take time, and I could never predict when that was going to happen. So I started buying the stock in the 2s, and it went to 10. And then it went back down to 3, but I built my position. And then it went to 20, and I bought more and built my position, but it went back to 2. Then it went to 30, and I built my position up and down all along the way. I continued to build a bigger position at all types of prices. And then nothing happened for years, and they didn't get the FDA approval that we expected. It didn't happen on my timeline. My timeline prediction was dead wrong. But fast forward a few years, the fundamentals of everything that I had done the research on were intact. They were true, and the stock went to 100, and everybody made a fortune. But anybody who could not stomach the pain and could not build a position and could not tolerate the pain of holding on to the position through tremendous volatility, well, they either got hurt or did not participate in the massive gain when the gains happened. Because if the fundamentals are intact, eventually the market catches up with the fundamentals. But we're talking about stocks, not the housing market. And I know that many people think that the housing market is overvalued, and they don't agree with the prices. But the prices for the home aren't dictated by our opinions. They're only dictated by what a buyer is ready, willing, and able to pay. And so the market will go up, the market will go down, and each market will trade completely differently. But make no mistake, we have been playing a game of economic and debt, financial, musical chairs for 15 plus years. And there are far less chairs available to everybody who needs one. So when the music stops, and it will stop abruptly, there's going to be lots of folks left without a chair, which is a long way of getting to: don't believe anything you hear, don't believe anything you see, only believe what you can prove, and only do whatever is right for you. And if you're thinking about buying or selling or really doing anything anywhere, please reach out. I've got a link down below. If you click the link, it'll take you to my Calendly page, and we can have a 15-minute phone consultation at your earliest convenience. But just know I love you, and I'm always here to help.